every year there are those one or two players at each position that are really kind of those workout warriors that have all of the physical measurable tools that make you think that, my God, this guy is going to be a can't miss stud. But then when you actually go and you watch the film and you watch the tape, you're like, well, he's got this, he's got that. You can't coach that. But he needs a lot of coaching in these areas. This year's example of that in terms of the wide receiver, position has to be Martavis Bryant from Clemson. Now, here's a guy that did benefit some from playing on the opposite side of Sammy Watkins, having somebody like a Taj Boyd throwing him the football, but he does bring some nice things to the table. He has a tremendous size speed combination, one of the very best, if not arguably the best, in this entire 2014 NFL draft class at the wide receiver position. Here's a guy, maybe 6'3", 6'4", over 200 pounds, and he can fly. He's got great initial quickness, good explosiveness, good burst, and great vertical deep speed. And not only that, for a guy that's almost 6'4", he has some decent wiggle to him too. And what I mean by wiggle is he has the agility in the open field to make people miss and actually generate some yards after the catch. Something you might not always associate with the guy that's 6'4", 210, 215 pounds, in that area. He showed me a great ability, obviously, with this size, to also be able to go up and make the tough catch, to be able to go up to the highest point and win the jump ball. He showed the ability to also make some incredibly difficult, complicated catches that sometimes, frankly, it's skill over will, frankly, when it comes to the NFL level. You need a guy that sometimes can just go out there and make that damn spectacular play, and a Martavis Bryant, from a physical tool standpoint, is the type of guy to do just that. Now, I also looked at him, and I actually saw a guy that was relatively willing as a run blocker. Not a great run blocker. Occasionally would have some lapses where he seemed like he wasn't all that interested in doing it, but other times he did show a willingness and somewhat of an ability to at least hold his own as a blocker on the perimeter, which, like I said, again, a lot of NFL teams are going to value out of a wide receiver playing on the outside. They want guys that can block in the running game too. For me, it's okay, but it's not a dire priority because, again, if I'm drafting a wide receiver in the first or second round and one of my major focuses is his run blocking, then I have a fucking problem with my priorities in terms of the skill sets that a wide receiver could bring to the table. Now, in terms of some of the weaknesses or areas of growth for Martavis Bryant, I've heard some questions about his maturity, but I don't really know one way or another. I'm not really concerned about that because I can't judge it because I don't know the man. What I do know is that playing at Clemson, he had a lot of simplistic routes to run, a lot of screens or a lot of deep passes. So he's going to need some work on his route running. His hands, not terrible, but definitely need some work. There were times where he dropped very routine, very simple throws. He's a guy, too, that even though he is about 6'4", maybe 205 pounds, I would say, he could stand to get a little more muscle on his frame and get a little more meat on his bones, so that way he could be even more physical, because even at 6'4", there are going to be some corners that are more solidly put together that might be able to push him off his spot and get him out of his route, and a Martavis Bryant might struggle a little bit to get some separation against those taller, more physical man cover corners, the guys like the Shermans and the Talibs and the Darrell Revises of the worlds, if you will. But you also look at this guy too, and you also wonder, because of that size and speed combination and the athleticism that he does bring to the table, and the fact that he played with a Sammy Watkins and a Taj Boyd, does that overinflate his draft stock? Does that create a disconnect between the perception and the reality? The reality being maybe that he was the beneficiary of playing around some good talent at Clemson for the past couple of years. The reality being is that some games he would have some nice moments and he would make some big plays. In other games, he was really a non-factor for Clemson in the passing game and in the offense, and that is a fact. Is it more about the fact of what this guy could be, or are you drafting this kid more off of what he will be? Now, in terms of an NFL comparison, I will go with somebody like a Demaryius Thomas, somebody at Georgia Tech when he was there. With this type of system that they were running, they weren't exactly featuring the wide receiver all that much, but you could see in Demaryius Thomas, when they did give him the opportunities, again, a guy about 6'4", 205, 210 pounds, that could fly, that could go up and get the jump ball, and really showed that physical tool set, to be a featured number one wide receiver at the NFL level, and that's what Demaryius Thomas has become. And I do see that type of talent level and those type of physical similarities between a Demirus Thomas and a Martavis Bryant. Bryant is a little more raw than Thomas was coming into the NFL, and I think he's going to need a little more work and he's going to need a little more patience. Now, with these guys that are kind of boom or bust prospects, it's because of their physical tool set, and people get enthralled with that and they become enchanted by that. But the reality is he's far from a finished product. It would not surprise me at all to see somebody take Martavis Bryant very early in the second round because, again, that physical tool set is something you just don't come across every day. The reality of the situation is when you take his physical tool set and match it with his production and the finish on his game right now, you're looking really more at maybe a third round prospect. But again, those are the type of guys that if you gamble on and they can develop into big time players, man, oh man, your organization is sitting pretty because you've potentially found a number one wide receiver and didn't have to spend a first round pick for him, and you didn't have to spend a ton of money to go out in free agency and get one. Martavis Bryant is going to be a hot name in draft circles over the next month and a half or so. You're probably going to see his draft stock rise some. And like I said, I would be surprised if he didn't for sure go in the first 20 picks of the second round, maybe in the first 5 to 10. I don't think the first round is a possibility. It's too deep of a class with too many other talented, gifted, far more polished, and NFL-ready wide receivers than a Martavis Bryant. The ironic thing is when you look at Georgia Tech on the flip side, he could be more Stephen Hill, who I thought was going to be a lot better and so far has been a complete bust. Now, is that just because of him not working hard? Is that because of the system and talent that he's played with? Who knows? We will find out here this year. But it's either going to be Stephen Hill or it's going to be Demirus Thomas for Martavis Bryant, one of the two. There's not a whole lot of middle ground, but Martavis Bryant is either going to make an NFL GM look like a genius or a complete moron for taking him somewhere very high in the second round of this 2014 NFL draft.